All right, guys. So I'm here with Justin Tucker from the Baltimore Ravens. I'm gonna read his bio for a second, but most of y'all probably don't need an introduction. But he's undrafted free agent in 2012. He played at the University of Texas and caught on with the Baltimore Ravens and won the starting job there in training camp and has since then become the most accurate kicker in the history of the NFL. Is right at 91% for career field goal made. The word of the week being consistency, we wanted to get Justin on board and talk about some of his habits, routines, and things that have led to him being the most accurate kicker in the NFL. So, Justin, welcome. I'll let you kind of introduce yourself and talk for a second.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, dude. Yeah, so I'm Justin Tucker. I'm a kicker for the Ravens. Jeremiah and I are also brothers-in-law and good friends too. So thanks for having me on to talk for a minute. But yeah, you said the word of the week is consistency, and I think it goes without saying that in my particular line of work as a place kicker in the NFL, consistency is key. You don't have a job unless you have some semblance of consistency with regard to your performance on the field. Now, performance on the field and creating some level of consistency doesn't just stay on the field. For me, it's every little detail thing that you could possibly think of. So, like some people might even say it's a little crazy at times or a little OCD, but some of the stuff I do or I try to do to create that level of consistency, it starts at home with even just like a nighttime routine of spending 5, 10, 15 minutes, depending on the time of the year, just getting a good stretch in. Spending just a few minutes to decompress, put my phone away, and listen to like a little bit of music or something like that. Those are just a couple of things off the field that I guess I would say those are habits that I try to follow regularly. And sometimes I'll get a little lazy and I won't do it, and then I will recognize that I'm not following certain habits that I should be, and then that thing will just click and I'll jump right back into what I know I'm supposed to be doing to make myself a better football player. I know a lot of what you guys talk about with performance courses, consistency outside of what you're doing with your on field or on the court or in the weight room regiments. So, I figured I would touch briefly on like stretching and, whether you want to call it meditation or mindfulness, like taking a minute to recognize, these are the habits that I want to create for myself and the habits that I want to follow so I can be more consistent with my performance in whatever sport that may be.
Yeah. So
So
let me.
I'm
I'm
just
not gonna.
a little bit, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No. I think that's kind of where I want to take this, and obviously I don't want to waste a bunch of your time, but yeah, I've watched you. Obviously, I've known you for I don't know when did we meet in 2000, 2009,
Mm-hmm.
2008. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
somewhere in there. And so obviously have followed your career for a while. But I think one of the things that I admire at least is kind of the routine and how you go about your week during kind of practice prep or game prep. So you touched on it briefly, but what does your just kind of give these guys and girls a little insight into what you're doing? What does your normal week look like inside of your season?
Yeah, so during our football season, we have practice Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We have a short practice on Saturday, and then we play on Sundays in a typical uh, Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening game time week. Um, my Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is pretty similar as far as, I get up in the morning, have a cup of coffee, go to meetings. Then in the middle of the day, we have practice. And then afterwards we'll have, on my, for me, I'm not necessarily meeting as much as everybody else, or game planning, because my playbook is pretty straightforward. It's kick the ball through the yellow things. So I will take it upon myself to study my own video from that particular practice day and see if there's, anything, even if it's really, really small, a really, really small detail that I want to improve upon going into the next day. I'll watch that after practice, and I'll do that pretty much every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Saturday is just like for me, it's kind of a take care of my, Friday afternoon and Saturday throughout the day are just kind of take care of my body type of days. So I'll do all my body work and stretching, whatever physical therapy I feel like I need to do. I'll take care of all that stuff Friday afternoon and Saturday. And really throughout the week as well, but I devote a lot more time to that sort of stuff toward the end of the week, if you will. And then, from there on out, it's just kind of jumping into the routine of Saturday afternoon, whether we're traveling or staying at home. I will, I'll really do everything I can to take my mind away from football, so I can, give myself just like a little bit of a break, because Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday morning, it's all football all the time. And then, if you don't give yourself a chance to just like decompress and not think about anything for just a couple of hours, I've found in the past, I'll just be like all wound up uptight on Sunday morning and throughout the game. And, I think anybody will tell you, you perform better when you're relaxed and when you're just having fun. So I just, try to follow the same routine as much as I can throughout the week. And, I know I mentioned like Wednesday morning, I'll wake up and I'll have a cup of coffee and go to meetings, but there is so much nitty gritty detail stuff that people probably don't necessarily care to know about, but I'm going to tell you anyways. So, I always have, and these aren't superstitions as far as I'm concerned. I think they're just part of my routine, but I kind of tend to sit at the same table at our team facilities for breakfast on Wednesday and Thursday and Friday mornings. I have peanut butter on my waffles and I cover them in syrup, and I have like a little egg and cheese and potato burrito with spinach that Shorty will always make for me. All right. So, and this isn't even, we haven't even gotten to like 8 a.m. yet. But all of these little things, I feel like, there's a level of comfort in routine. When you take out, any sort of extraneous stuff from your routine, when you simplify, I think it makes things, I don't want to say it just makes it easier. It makes it better, at least in my opinion. All of the little things that, we do as specialists, that I do as a kicker, and I'm talking about off the field, it builds into this mindset that is, I think, incredibly important for any athlete, but especially ones in, individual sports, if you will. Kicking a football in front of thousands of people when a game is on the line can feel like an individual sport within a team sport. And having a sense of routine around all of that and creating this mindset where you know how to simplify things through a routine, that has undoubtedly led to success for myself and my teammates, and I know that without a doubt.
Yeah, no, I think 100%, and I think there's a study called, I don't know exactly who did it, but it talks about decision fatigue, and basically what you were saying, kind of simplifying and having doing the same thing. You're not having to think about, you're not having to make a decision about what you're going to do. You kind of have it all planned out, and it's just become habit. And then that's why people we'll eat healthy in the morning, and then by the time they've made a bunch of decisions throughout the day, usually by the time nighttime rolls around, it's a little easier to give in to certain things. But yeah, having a set routine, I think, especially from an athlete or a coach's standpoint, is huge. You started going to this, and I'm going to bring it back up. Your kind of game day routine. You talked about trying not to think too much about football and what you're going to be doing, and not letting that get to you. But you do have kind of a unique pregame ritual, I think, from the time you get to the stadium, laying out your clothes, doing all the things before you even take the field. Kind of walk them through that side.
Yeah. So, all right. So growing up in Texas, I was always a big Dallas Cowboys fan, and one of my favorite players ever since I can remember, maybe second, third, or fourth grade. Whenever we'd play football out at recess, I would always bring my Dallas Cowboys do-rag and tie it up like Deion Sanders would. And I thought Prime was just like the coolest dude, and he was like a heck of a player. And one of his pregame routines I remember seeing when I was a kid was he would lay his uniform out in like the shape of like a little man on the floor, right? And like nobody could touch it. That was part of it. So if you got near his uniform, like socks, shoes, pants, shoulder pads, jersey, helmet, like, the mouthpiece, the wristbands, if you got near it, it was a problem. I always just thought that was kind of funny. And when I started playing rec soccer when I started playing like more competitive soccer, I thought that was just kind of like a funny ritual, right? But I started doing that like with my soccer uniform before I would go and play, and then I would have like I would score a couple goals, or I would have like a really good game, and then I just like kept doing it, and it kind of became a part of my pregame preparation, even as young as like 10, 11, 12 years old. And looking back, now a lot of superstitions or rituals or habits, like some people, might have a judgment here or there, one way or the other. But if it's productive and it works for you, like, do it, find it, whatever it is. I guess looking back now, like doing that, laying my uniform out in the shape of a little guy on the floor, kind of in a way, I know for sure now, like it gets me in the mindset that I'm about to play in an NFL football game. And without it being overly serious or stressful, it's just kind of like a thing that I do that, if somebody walks over toward my locker and like is about to accidentally like bump my helmet on the floor with their foot or something, like I'll be like, oh, whoa, take a step back. I was social distancing, guys, before social distancing was cool. And doing that would bring like a little levity to the situation, because playing in an NFL football game is like pretty serious stuff. But we're also playing football. We're having fun. So that's just part of my, like the fun part of my routine that gets me kind of, ticking towards game time.
Sure.
And then a lot of my other, I don't really have any other, like routines or superstitions like before I get on the field, other than my, I guess I would have to categorize that under the uniform thing under superstitions. But as far as actual very helpful preparations and routines, I always make sure I do the same string of stretching and activation exercises. I will get in the infrared sauna, like if it's super cold outside, because we play in the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, I'll slam a cup of black coffee, which is basically like tar, the way our equipment guy William makes it, the William Sheridan special. It's not good, but it's a part of the routine, and it is important. It's functional, it gets me warmed up from the inside out. But all those little things, they lead to, I know this without a doubt, they lead to kicks being made.
What about no, that's funny. And some of that I didn't even know. I didn't know that started that far back, all the way to 10 or 11 years old. I
Prime.
thought you started
Prime, baby.
thought you, prime. Yeah, I mean you were on his team, weren't you? One of the years of the Pro Bowl.
I
Yeah,
was.
that's
I
pretty cool.
was. Sick
Uh,
flex right there too. I mean, like one of those Pro Bowls.
the last thing I was going to talk about is kind of your kick, like your pre-kick routine. Obviously, being as consistent as you are, you do the same thing every time. And I was curious. I thought you were about to touch on it as pregame warm up and routine and activation. Do you? And I've watched this from the sidelines and seen, but I don't know that I've paid attention enough to know the answer. Do you? I know you have Randy and those guys, and do you go the same hash mark and follow the same setup, or is it depending on the wind, or how do you go through that process? And then what is your actual pregame or not your pregame, but pre-kick routine as
Sure.
far as setting up and everything else you do?
Yeah, after I've gotten my body warmed up and I've swung my leg a few times, I will join up with Morgan Cox and Sam Cook, our snapper and our punter slash holder, and we'll hit a handful of kicks each direction in the stadium. I tend to stick to the same spots, so I'll start in the middle of the field with a PAT, and then we'll back up, and if in 3-yard increments, alternating left and right hash, and I'll hit 6 kicks one way, 6 kicks the other, and then like 1 or 2 more kicks from the logo at midfield, just because the grass may be different on the logo because it might have been freshly painted. So I've got to figure out, well, if I've got to really lay away into one like right before halftime or at the end of the game, I need to know what the footing will be like there versus in the green parts of the field. Yeah, I'll tend to hit 6 kicks each way, plus or minus, plus a couple more, and then my pre-kick routine for each kick, I try to make my preparation the same before each kick, so that the variables are decreased when I'm actually kicking the ball. Because like I said, we play in the Mid-Atlantic, and we don't have the luxury of playing in Jerry World and kicking inside like 12 games a year like some of these guys do. So I have to account for the field conditions, wind, rain, temperature. All of those things factor into. All of those things have an effect on the ball flight. So the things that I control them to a T. So on first, like if we're in field goal range, after first down, I pop a ball into the net. After second down, I pop a ball into the net. And while third down is happening, I run to about where the line of scrimmage would be, right next to our head coach, so they don't have to look for me or anything in case we're going to say, hey, we're going to go kick it, which, more often than not, we will if it's, 4th and 5 or more, whatever it may be. And then my routine for the actual kick itself, and keep in mind, like the time between the snap, the hold, and the kick is typically about 1.3 seconds. So all of this stuff is, geared toward making the most out of those 1.3 seconds. So my actual pre-kick routine is I will pick out a spot with my right big toe, and this is the spot that I designate to Sam. This is where I want the ball spotted. I'll pat down my plant with my left foot and figure out, what the footing is going to be like if I need to be a little bit slower or lighter footed with my approach. And I do all that right there and then. And then from there, it's picking a target based on the wind and the field conditions and everything else that I mentioned. And then from there, it's, 3 steps back, 2 to the side, look up at my target, take a deep breath in, let it out. There's the shoulder shrug. It's the most important part. And then I see the ball I look at the ball and I try to pick out the dimples on the ball that I'm going to contact with the top part of my foot, which would be about the equivalent of, right here. And then I tell myself, just like, sometimes it's, for me, sometimes it's the thought of the day, based on like how my body feels or whatever, but I might just tell myself foot to ball contact. I might have to tell myself wide plant. I might have to tell myself that day, get downfield, finish downfield. It's, and like, as I'm saying those things, no one's saying that all of that to themselves realistically in 1.3 seconds. So I kind of got to pick one or pick nothing, and then just think about the action of kicking the ball and not the consequence. I think you've heard me say that before. Like when I've come and spoken to, some of the high school kids, it's always about it's always think about the action, not the consequence. When you're talking about any sort of sports movement that has consequences, right? If you're a quarterback throwing a ball, you're not thinking about what's going to happen if I throw a pick. You're thinking about, planting your feet in the ground, like turning your shoulders, or I don't know, I'm not a quarterback, but you're thinking about like, hitting your target and nothing else. Because realistically, nothing else is important in that moment. Nothing else is important with regard to your thought process. Like my feelings, if I'm scared, which I'm lining up to kick a ball in front of millions of people on TV, like that's kind of nerve wracking. So yeah, like I'm a little scared, but I'm also excited. I'm eager. I'm happy to have the opportunity. But none of those feelings actually matter. What matters is sticking to your routine, thinking of the action of kicking the ball, seeing the ball go through the posts. And for us, even playing in the Mid-Atlantic and outside almost every game of my career, I can only think of maybe like 10, I don't know, 8 or 10 games that we played inside. But, all of those things considered, we make over 90% of our kicks, so there's got to be and I emphasize we, all of these things that I'm talking about, this is the way that Morgan, Sam, you mentioned Randy, he's our kicking coach, our special teams coordinators over the last several years have been, Jerry Rosberg and Chris Horton, even our head coach, Harbs, all of these principles are ones that we all follow collectively. Hence the we make kicks. You never do anything in a team sport on your own, even if you're, a pitcher in baseball and you're, staring down the catcher's mitt with the bases loaded, full count, and you're trying to win a World Series, right? Think about like when you're thinking about the most pressure-packed moments in sports, there's a we around it and there's an action to it, and just buying into the action of the moment is the most important thing you can do.
No, that's awesome. I think that'll give something we kind of end on, kids to think about. One thing I was going to ask is if you go back and give yourself one tip, or give these guys and girls one tip, but I think you may have just covered it. Focus on the process and the action, and don't get caught up in all the noise. And man, I appreciate jumping on. We talk about all the time consistency being the mark of a champion, and obviously you're a definition of that, and what you've done over the last almost decade now. Appreciate you. I'm sure we'll be FaceTiming with the kids later on, but we'll talk, and appreciate you doing that.
You got it. Later, man.
All right, later.